The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Schoology. Schoology's passion lies in helping instructors and students have the best education experience possible. Schoology is a collaborative, student-focused, and faculty-centered learning management system. Students love Schoology because it gives them 24/7 access to course materials, real-time feedback from their instructors, and easy-to-use collaborative tools. Teachers love the streamlined workflow, integrated apps such as Google and Microsoft tools, and the ability to view evidence of student learning for making instructional decisions. To learn more about what is possible with Schoology, simply visit Schoology.com.
If there's anyone that's a loser right now, it's this dude, and he's about to go to jail, and I think he knows it. Welcome to OnEducation. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glenn Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss the 1-year anniversary of the Parkland school shooting, how extra arts education is boosting writing scores, the results of the Denver strikes, and our guests this week are NEA Foundation Global Learning Fellows, Sarah Merklowitz-Kuhner and Noah Zeichner.
Well, first we're going to talk about video games.
Of course. We might as well go light first.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say. So, I mean, totally addicted to Farm Together. I know that people, I'm sure, have seen the tweets because especially Steve has been tweeting up a storm about playing Farm Together. I'm pretty addicted. I'm kind of hooked. This is like Farmville plus, and I won't lie, it's a little fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's the best part, I think, is just that it's collaborative, so you can actually help each other on your different farms to be able to harvest crops, plant things, build stuff. And it has some of that Farmville type of components that you would play on your phone, except I think the game is very cute and good graphics and very easy to play. And it seems like you can play on almost any computer too. So it's really, really good.
I've been totally planning my crop schedule based on my availability to sit in front of my computer for half an hour and rotate the crops after they're ready. Mm-hmm. So for sure, I have crops that are ready. It's 1:47 right now. I have crops that are ready at 2:30. So we got to be done at 2:30, Glenn, so that I can go change I got to go pull some potatoes.
You got to get those crops out of the ground and plant some new ones.
That's right. I'm going to need to recruit some people too. My farm is getting huge.
Nice.
Too, so I need to recruit some people to help me.
Get some farm hands.
I said to Steve, it's what did I say? It's beyond me now. It's bigger than me. It's a
lot of work to do.
Overwhelming. So a Civilization expansion came out this week. Gathering Storm, Civilization 6 Gathering Storm came out. And I mean, I already knew all of the things that were coming out for it, except for this one thing. And I think it's ended up being the coolest feature of the whole expansion. Did you ever... Not a lot of people did this, but maybe some hardcore gamers did. This idea of playing a game and saving it, and then putting it on a disc or something, and then bringing it over to your buddy's house and them loading it up and making a play, doing a play, whatever, and then saving it and giving it back to you. Did you ever do anything like that? Or I guess the other example that people referenced when I brought this up was chess, and how people would have a chessboard and they'd make a move and then they'd write the move on a letter and then mail the letter to someone, and then they would have a chessboard set up in the same configuration and make that move, and you play chess by mail. Did you ever do anything like that? Did
not, but that sounds pretty hardcore.
It's old school too, right? So This is what you did before you had the internet and you could just play together with people all the time. Mm-hmm. So Civ 6 came out with they call it Cloud Play, but I'm calling it the Civ 6 slow roll, because basically what you're going to do is you all gather in a staging area and sign up to play the game. And then you choose your Civ that you're going to use, and you set up the game as if you're setting up a normal multiplayer game. But the way it works now is, instead of all playing together at the same time and just waiting for each other to do their turns, you do your turn and then you can log off.
Yeah.
And then everyone else can do their turns when they're ready. And when it's your turn again, it'll send you a message
get
on
notified.
Steam.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll send you an email. It'll send you a message on Steam. It's your turn, and you just log in and play your turn and then log out again. So, I mean, games are going to take forever.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with Civilization is that games took forever anyways. And you never finished a game because, I mean, so like the times when like Steve or you or I or Paul Davarzi would play together, we wouldn't even get, 150 turns in because it takes so long to play a multiplayer game. Sure. Easily twice as long as a normal game. So I think this is going to take forever to play, but I think it's going to be fun as hell. I'm pretty excited about it. So we're going to start a game today, hopefully, and see how it goes. And Canada is in Civilization 6 for the first time. Canada is a Civ in a Civ game as an official civilization. So
pretty big deal.
Rad. It is a pretty big deal, and we're very peaceful, as you would expect. You can't declare wars against Canada by surprise.
Okay.
And Canada cannot declare surprise wars against other people.
Okay.
They have to be justified wars. What else? Our special building is a hockey rink.
Oh yeah.
Which is very,
that makes sense.
Very appropriate. And we can build farmlands on tundra. So all that ice at the top and the bottom of the map now has become useful areas for anyone playing a Canada Civ. So, fun time. I'm a giant Civilization nerd, and this was really exciting. I'm excited to play Canada, and I'm excited to destroy Paul Davarzi and Steve Isaacs and Glenn Irvin in a game of Civilization. As the peaceful Canadians, you guys are going to get dominated.
He's already talking.
Absolutely. The last gaming thing I wanted to mention is, only just something I've noticed the last week, the last maybe 2 weeks since FETC, is so much buzz about esports. Like everyone is talking about esports and education. I know that our friend who hasn't been on the podcast yet, Dr. Haskell, is doing awesome stuff at Boise State as well. And there's so much going on with esports and education. I just saw Alice Keeler posted on Facebook that she was at a conference in Alaska and someone was doing a session on esports. And it's like, who is this? I want to know, because I want to get them also connected. And there's colleges and universities popping up everywhere with programs. I think this is a thing, man. I think we got this.
Oh yeah, it is already becoming the thing, and then it's going to get huge, and it's just a matter of everybody kind of figuring out what does it mean to be at the high school level. Yeah. And then because the college levels are already happening now. And so there's examples, for example, Boise State University and a bunch of other universities that have already set the bar. I mean, they're even putting it on ESPN. So, I mean, I'm talking about the university championships. So that's a really big deal. It's just legitimizing it. And then now pushing it back into the amateur world, the high school high school sports scholastic world there, and then figuring out how does that all fit together, which is going to be awesome.
Nice. So transitioning to not awesome things now.
Yeah.
So let's listen. I've calmed down from this. I actually totally forgot that Donald Trump Jr. called all teachers losers. I mean, I don't even know what to say without like getting too angry about this, other than like, I mean, just think about the source, I guess, is all I'm going to say. If there's anyone that's a loser right now, it's this dude, and he's about to go to jail, and I think he knows it. And so, I mean, I'm having a hard time taking it seriously. I'm glad it kind of fell off, other than the t-shirt, which is awesome. We should put the t-shirt in the show notes. Did you buy that t-shirt?
I got it. Yep. It's being sent to me right now. Loser teachers.
Yep. Just another loser teacher or something like that?
Yep. It's the picture on my Facebook. Yep. Just awesome. Yep. Just another loser teacher. And no, I mean, it is a big deal because, as we'll link the Washington Post article there, about this comment, and really it's just there's something that was, when he said this at that rally, was so intentional. A lot of the things that Donald Trump, his dad, the president, says, I think are just things that he just comes up with off the top of his head. This was something very, very intentional about the way that he posed this, statement, and basically stating that we are indoctrinating our students into a socialism and this socialistic viewpoints, and that's part of his loser comment to us. But there's just something really dark about the way he set this up, and basically saying things like, you can stand up to them, basically saying you can stand up to these teachers, which, if you don't know, around the world, in Germany and the Netherlands and throughout the world, there's some really extreme right-wing factions that are pushing against any types of these things that we all want in our lives. For example, healthcare, for everybody, and a great education for everybody. And they are saying that that they're reporting teachers for teaching, anything that has to do with, just regular, what we would consider to be just global viewpoints. It's not like we're trying to indoctrinate kids into a specific anything, but it's already happening around the world, this kind of super extreme right-wing things. And I think that's where he's borrowing a lot of his language from.
It's so frustrating. And it does matter to students. When students hear this stuff, it's almost like a permission slip in some cases. I mean, this is the president's son saying this, and you haven't heard the president say, listen, not all teachers are losers. There's great teachers. He didn't say that at all. I mean, wouldn't you think that would be the president's job to say, my son shouldn't have said that. Teachers are great people, and we should, say something nice.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
For the love of God, say something. But he didn't. And so it's a permission slip. And now you've literally permitted students to adopt, these views that their teachers are losers and people that they shouldn't respect and look up to, when I think that in most cases, teachers are the exact person that you should be, respecting and looking up to. It's sad, and it's happening, like you said. It's happening up here in Ontario. Like, Doug Ford is undermining teachers all over the place right now. With different kind of things getting involved in the curriculum, and accusing student unions of, he says, crazy Marxist nonsense, and then he didn't even back it up. Like, he didn't know what he actually said. We have the equivalent of, what's the Steve Jones thing? I'm glad I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's a thing called Rebel Media up here. Mm-hmm. It's like the psycho right wing, news, whatever.
Sure, Rush Limbaugh kind of thing.
Yeah, it's basically like Doug Ford barfing up Rebel Media stuff, and not really even knowing what it said, because Doug Ford's a dummy, just like Donald Trump. So, I mean, it's really frustrating to hear, the president's son. Listen, yeah, I'm a democratic socialist. That's my ideology. So whatever. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily to teach social democracy in schools as it is. I mean, that's, if you're looking for social democracy ideals, it's egalitarianism and fairness and equity and peace and healthcare and education and high qualities of social services, so that the lowest among us can be raised up and made healthy and better. So if you want to call those things bad and you want to call me a loser for having those ideas, then I'm just another loser teacher too, I suppose, right?
Yeah, no. And I mean, I would say too, Mike, that I want to emphasize that the majority of our teachers do not bring in any kind of ideals into their classrooms. They understand that there's a line 100%. In the United States, at least, there's a very fine line there about the way that you teach and making sure that you teach both sides of everything. So all of our social studies teachers make sure that they represent both sides of the aisle, and they actually stay clear of making sure that the students don't know which side they actually represent. One of my good friends Mike Kropp, who had actually passed away a few years ago, he was amazing at this. He basically played devil's advocate with all of his students, though he might have been someone that was more on the left. You would never know that by the way that he taught, because he wanted our students, and that's what most of our teachers wanted our students to make sure that they think for themselves, that they understand all the viewpoints of all the things, that they're not just spitting out, as you just said, something that's they heard on TV or that their parents are saying, that they understand what it is that is out there. And then if they're going to support a viewpoint, that they really truly understand it and then have passion for that. And it didn't matter if it was on the right or in the center or on the left. More importantly, that they were just educated. So that's super important for us in the United States, that we do that. And so when it's a misrepresentation of all of our teachers to say that we're indoctrinating them into some kind of, whatever it might be, their belief of socialism or whatever it is.
Yeah, 100%. So about a year ago, I guess it was Friday, a year ago Thursday was the Parkland shooting. I guess in our notes we had wrote what has changed, and then I had wrote nothing at all. I had actually written something a little more obscene, but I mean, it's been a pretty tough year. I mean, there's been multiple other shootings. There was literally a shooting on Friday, in Illinois, on the day after the anniversary. The only good thing, I guess, from my opinion, I'll let you give yours in a second. My opinion is there's two good things I think maybe have come from this. One is that the awareness and the conversation has risen quite a bit. Like it's on everyone's mind all the time now. It definitely was a topic of the midterm elections. And a lot of Democrats got elected in the House, a lot new Democrats, and that it was a central topic to a lot of those people. So I think that's important. I guess bump stocks are going to be illegal starting in March, and that kind of came as a result of the Las Vegas thing. But I mean, that's, I guess, an advancement. But man, we got a long ways to go here, eh?
Yeah. I mean, I think another huge thing that did happen besides the awareness is the rising of our youth, which we started actually this podcast in March, when we were talking about, this is what our central topic was the students walking out, the students rising, the students being empowered right now, and saying we need to change this for us now. Have the policies changed significantly? Nope. We will see. Now that we have, some new members of Congress or whatever it might be, I think that really we'll see the biggest changes happen in 2020, not only in the election, but also this topic is, the majority of people believe that we need to do something massive, overhauling our gun laws, especially when it deals to automatic type of weapons. So the bump stocks thing is a huge deal. That should have already been, happened right away. And then now the movement, and also people's eyes wide open about the NRA's influence on our elections and then on the policies that actually govern us. And so that's a really good positive thing for our schools. Now, we've talked about security at schools. School security is probably the top topic that our school boards and our superintendents and principals have on their priority list, which it should be. But it's also devastating that that's what we have to, that has to be the number one thing that we're concerned about. How do we keep our kids safe? We need to do that at the legislative level, also at the national level, and making sure that gun laws are they're changed significantly for who can obtain guns, what types of guns are out there, and those types of things in the United States. I think it's about to happen. It's just that it's a super slow process, as legislation usually is.
I like your optimism, at least. 2020 can't come soon enough, and I think that we can make I guess not me, but you guys down there, my friends, can really do some good work and hopefully get some elected officials in that'll actually make some changes. It'd be nice to see a majority like Obama had in 2008, where you can just like do things and not have to kind of worry about filibusters and stuff like that. Let's get some things done, because there's a ways to go. I think it's no surprise that we're going to post an article in the show notes. Extra arts education boosts writing scores. I think one of the things that people were always surprised to hear from me about when I've talked, or because I was the computer science teacher. There was a perception that I wasn't into drama and art and stuff like that, and I am. I actually think some of this stuff is absolutely amazing. I wish I had the talent to teach it and to do it. I'm not much of a dramatist or an artist, but I'm a fan of people who are, like a giant fan of people who are. And I think that it's a skill like my wife has that I absolutely do not have, that I think brings so much to education. So it doesn't seem like a surprise to me that, not only are students scores in various academic areas being boosted when they're spending more time in the arts, but their social emotional learning, their compassion and stuff like that is being boosted as well.
Yep. And the main thing that we need to remember is that this isn't a competition between math and writing time or reading time and then something else. And really in the United States, we look at these things, we even call them extras or extracurricular activities, and they should be the essential components of a student's education. The most important parts for me, honestly, about my son's education is that it's super well-rounded, and that he gets an opportunity to sing in a choir, to play an instrument in a band, and then to do anything else that he might be interested in, including learning a second language, art classes, industrial arts or technical type of arts where they're actually learning those types of things. And I see some things here like theater, visual arts. Those things are not the extracurriculars. They are the essential components of basically being good humans and really having a broad sense of what does it mean to be a citizen in the world. And there's tons of our students where their passion lies in these, in these specific things. And we should make sure that they have an ability to be able to go ahead and do those on a daily basis, not in a every once in a while kind of thing, but on a daily basis. And the more arts, as it says here, that you have, the better writing scores, the better other scores you're going to have, which is, in this case, proven by research.
Yeah. Super interesting article. We'll link it in the show notes for everyone to read. The Denver teacher strike is over, and when we come back, we're going to talk about it a little bit.
Quests. One of Classcraft's most popular features, with over 100,000 lessons created by teachers and 3 million learning objectives completed by students so far, is now part of Classcraft's free offerings. In 2019, your students won't just be learning multiplication, chemistry, or any other content. They'll be saving the kingdom. Transform your lessons into adventures with Quests today. Visit classcraft.com for more information.
All right, welcome back, friends, to the podcast. The strike was quick. It must have been painful. And it's over now. The teachers in Denver walked the picket lines for, I think, about 3 days. Lowest paid teachers in the country, or one of the lowest paid states, I think ranked 46th. 46th? Oh, that's a mouthful. We're going to edit that. Ranked 46th in the United States in average teacher pay, which is pretty terrible. It looks like they've come out on top in this strike with some huge returns. Glenn, what do you think?
It was fantastic for the teachers. Their movement was basically away from as we had talked about in the last episode, away from this type of pay where it's connected to usually high stakes testing, which is called performance pay. Some of that actually still exists for example, in Minnesota. There was some, and it was part of this theory that even, like I said, President Obama had, and this concept of race to the top, and basically adding funds to schools, but not really adding them fully, and saying they're associated with specific measures of performance. And in Denver, basically what it did is it held their average salary down, and then only specific teachers, certain teachers, received these performance pay boosts. And even with the performance pay boost, they were still very underpaid. So they eliminated the majority of that, those performance pay and those components of the contract, and went back to a similar to a normal salary grid. So that was a huge win for them, I believe.
How about this advancement in professional development?
Yeah. So
holy moly! Like the idea that there's going to be actually written into the contract, PD units and in time to read and study and reflect and apply learnings. I mean, just that sentence alone is huge. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. So there's this professional development unit proposal that's actually part of the contract now that they're signing. And basically a teacher or probably even maybe a department proposes something to the district and they approve it. And this proposal includes 45 hours, which include what Mike just described, which was your time for instruction and participation in learning. And what it is now the realization of a district stating that this type of professional development should be rewarded on a salary schedule. Yeah. That happens very rarely in the United States. Mostly our salary grids are associated with graduate credit units, which if you ask the majority of teachers, if you ask the majority of teachers like myself, how much learning and application takes place at the university level for your master's degree and how much you could apply it to what you're currently doing in your classroom, it's a big disconnect. Even the best programs have a huge disconnect between those two things. So why not let the teachers develop a proposal that actually fits their school and benefits their students, and then they work on it, have something at the end, they reflect on it, and then apply those things to their classrooms, and then their students benefit. And then this teacher can also say, hey, I actually moved to another lane across the grid there to be able to go ahead because I did this thing. So a fantastic example for other states to go ahead and follow, other school districts too, to be able to follow.
For sure. The money's a big deal. Average raise by, I think, starting pay by 7%. Average overall increase in pay by 11.7%. Support staff getting raises as well. Bus drivers and stuff like that, I think I read as well, potentially getting pay increases. And I added this line at the bottom of the notes because I think it's hilarious. I would love to know actually how many folks in the school boards in Ontario are getting bonuses. I never even imagined a 5-figure bonus for a senior school administrator actually being a thing that happened, let alone something that, they would be not wanting to cut because of a negotiation. But 5-figure bonuses for senior school administrators coming to an end. Hey, that's great. Let's put some more food on the table for teachers instead of giving everyone $20,000 bonuses. I don't know who these people are.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, what's crazy and what people don't understand maybe about Colorado is that it's the second coming of California. And by what I mean by that is about 14 years ago when we left Colorado, we knew that we were going to be outpriced to live there as far as teachers. And that was 14 years ago. And we knew that basically the house values were increasing so drastically at that point that our pay was not going to keep up with that. We weren't going to be able to afford housing, basically. Yeah. So what's happened though in the last, I don't know if people have heard, but Colorado passed a law that makes recreational marijuana legal. And what happened then is it blew up their economy in a in a great way. Tons of people have moved to Colorado, especially the Denver area. And what has happened is a lot of people with a lot of money have raised the values of all the homes and property values and just made it super expensive to live there. All the while, teaching has never ever come close to keeping up with this. And what was funny about it, the whole entire thing, Mike, is that when this was about to happen, they promised that they were going to put a certain percentage of this money into education. That was the biggest thing, that the sell on this is like, we're going to have the best schools, the best funded schools in the nation because we're going to pass this law. And it never came true. And there was definitely some people that benefited from this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's people who are mega rich in Colorado, but that isn't your teachers didn't benefit at all. I mean, they didn't even keep up with the cost of living.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, now they definitely need to use that sweet pot money for something.
Yeah.
Other than, more pot, I guess. It'll be good for the teachers. Say, hey, listen, I mean, big win, right? This is a big win.
Big win. Congratulations to the teachers in Denver, and then it's a good example for anyone else that's out there that's thinking of doing the exact same thing because they are not being funded correctly.
Yeah, you wrote it and you deserve it, and congratulations, hell of a job in Denver. And so when we come back, we're going to be joined by NEA Foundation Global Learning Fellows Sarah Merklowitz-Kuhner and Noah Zeichner. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We're thrilled to be joined today by Sarah Merklowitz-Kuhner and Noah Zeichner. These are NEA Foundation Global Learning Fellows and teachers from all over the U.S. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike and Glenn.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. Maybe we'll get a chance to give the listeners a little bit of an idea who you are and where you're from. Maybe we'll get Sarah to go first. Just introduce yourself, share your background with our listeners.
Sure. My name is Sarah Merklowitz-Kuhner, and I teach middle school special education, and I've taught language arts in special education for the last 8 years. And where I teach is specifically called MS-324, the Patria Mirabal Middle School, and it's named for one of the Mirabal sisters who famously were part of the resistance movement against the Dominican dictator, Rafael Trujillo, in the 50s and 60s. And so it's in honor of the neighborhood where my school is, and it's predominantly Latino, a lot of Puerto Rican, Dominican, and Mexican families mostly, and others, and many of whom are first or second generation immigrants. And now it may seem like in a major city such as New York that a global perspective would be a given. The borough of Queens is commonly referred to as the most diverse place on the planet, but real and authentic engagement among the different communities here doesn't always happen just because you're in a really genetically diverse subway car with others. So in my teaching, I always try to bring in texts and different voices and real world experiences that can, and a lot of hands-on resources so that I can try to broaden the experiences and perspectives of specifically my students.
And my name is Noah Zeichner. I teach high school social studies and Spanish in Seattle Public Schools, and I've been teaching in the district for about 15 years. I also work in a consulting teacher role, working with my school district's international education department, and we have 10 schools out of the 100 schools in Seattle Public that are designated as international schools. So for the last 10 years or so, I've been involved in the global education world and trying to make meaning out of what does it mean to be an international school.
Super interesting. So, I mean, we live in a, and you said globalization and stuff like that. We live in a shrinking world, obviously, where actions of one nation can impact the livelihood of people in other nations. It's actually part of the kind of the thing about this podcast even is that I'm Canadian and Glenn is American. And we talk about, how Canadians and Americans are different. And one of the things that I bring is, the perspective of America from outside of America. And it's why I'm super hyper interested in American politics and American policy. I think it's really important what happens down there affects me up here every day. What role do teachers play, do you think, in making sure students understand the interconnectedness of our world?
It's a great question. Well, as we know, teaching is a global profession, and there are millions and millions of teachers all around the world, all with this important call to action right now. We have some very challenging global problems that affect all of us on this planet. And I think there's no more important responsibility that a teacher anywhere in the world has right now than to help our students develop into active global citizens. And I'll just say that when I got involved in global ed work several years ago, I had a different understanding of what that meant to be a global educator. And at first, I looked at it as, it's important to bring the world into my classroom, to teach my students about the places I've traveled, to help them understand different cultures. And what I've come to understand over the last few years is that it's really the content, the global perspective in the curriculum is one slice of a global education. And really, the bulk of it are the skills and the competencies that young people need to interact with and work with people with very different worldviews and perspectives to address many of these really critical global challenges that we face today. So teachers play a critical role in exposing young people to different perspectives, different ideas, different ways of looking at these challenges. But also teachers themselves can play a role as change makers as well. There's a group of teachers, a large group of teachers down in El Paso, Texas this weekend, taking a stand against child detention. And that's global education too. So we're very proud of Mandy Manning from our state of Washington here, who's leading that effort. So, there's no shortage of opportunities and challenges that we need to address and bring the skills and the competencies to our students to be able to do that.
So the book is set up in lessons by grade level. And Sarah, your lesson in the book centers around building empathy and cultivating global curiosity about current events, such as natural disasters and like the aftermath that occurs. Tell our audience a bit more about that.
Sure. And I also wanted to build on what Noah was just talking about. It's not just bringing in the global perspective into a classroom. Global education doesn't see the local and global as mutually exclusive. So with my lesson that I developed for the book, part of it was modeled on an exercise that all of us Global Learning Fellows teachers participated in while we were together in DC. And it's the activity at the opening of this lesson where students allocate resources, which in this case are glittery stickers on a world map, so that they can distribute resources to areas that have been affected by natural disasters earlier this year. And the areas of the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, where Hurricane Maria struck, and in Mexico, where there were the earthquakes, those were the top ranking locations that got the glittery stickers in my classroom. And when we had our discussions where students were describing how they chose to focus, they always said something to the effect of, well, my family is there, or I've been there, or such and such classmate is from there. And that's not surprising for me to hear that my middle schoolers framed their responses through the lens of their personal or local experiences and their connections. But what it revealed is that students have a huge capacity for empathy and for helping others, and especially in the aftermath of tragic events, but that this empathy has to be sparked or activated by visuals or some other kind of concrete experience. So then the additional articles and activities in our lesson plan open up options for further study, further hands-on experiences, group work, or even charitable fundraising projects or service learning projects, depending on how teachers would like to work that into their existing curriculum. Personally, I went the route of reading and responding to articles because I was working on a nonfiction reading and annotating skill set. But our group had a number of science teachers who were interested in linking the physics of waves to tsunami damage occurring in coastal cities. But always we wanted to keep the question of how can people respond? How can we respond? What prevents us from responding? Those questions, keeping those in the forefront of our mind.
Very, very cool. So Noah, your lesson is very compelling also. You had 12th grade students adapt what they are learning to teach younger students, which I think is amazing, or their peers in a lesson that addresses one or more of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so you had these driving questions like, what issues in today's world do you see as global issues, and why and how do these issues impact people, societies, and the world? Tell us more about that lesson.
Sure. And first of all, it doesn't have to be 12th grade students. And I think all of these lessons in the book are very much adaptable and can be shifted around. You can have any group of older students teaching a group of younger students. And the idea for this lesson originated in a class that I used to teach called Global Leadership. And 3 times each semester, my students would take what they've learned about a various global issue. We studied water scarcity or climate change or global migration. And then they would develop about an hour-long lesson for a group of 4th or 5th graders. And then we'd walk down to a nearby elementary school and they would teach that lesson. So part of the vision behind this lesson is that, we often fall into the trap of telling our young students that they are the leaders of tomorrow. They are the leaders of the future. And I think that's a mistake. Really, our young people are leaders today, and they can be leaders today. We're watching teenagers all over Europe lead walkouts around climate change. We've seen what's happened in our own country with the issue of gun violence. So young people are leaders today, and we need to empower them. And so when we talk about educating for global citizenship or global education, learning about the world is one part, teaching the competencies like collaboration, effective communication of ideas, building empathy. Those are all very important too, but there's also the idea of taking action. And the action component of global education comes through in this lesson where it can feel overwhelming for young people when they look at an issue like climate change or water scarcity. What can I do? What can I do that's not just raising money or something that will actually involve me working with other people to address this problem? And so teaching, empowering them to teach younger students is a form of action. There are many ripple effects. Those younger students will go home and talk with their families, talk with their parents. Who knows what can come out of that, right? So, and also in my experience teaching that class, these were the most transformative moments of learning for the students, where even the kids who I was a little bit worried about working with 4th graders or 5th graders because they had some of their own challenges in high school, they always rose to the occasion, and it was just a powerful leadership growth opportunity for them. So. The issue itself doesn't necessarily matter. It could be any of these important global issues as content, but it's also the learning experience. It's experiential learning is really what it is, that the older students get to go through as they teach the lessons.
So I'd love to talk about how this book actually came together, because I found the first few pages of it absolutely fascinating. Glenn and I spent the better part of a whole segment last week talking about how teachers aren't collaborating enough. We're lucky to, and I assume you guys are the same in the sense that you spend a lot of your time working with other teachers, but there is, 8 million teachers in North America. A large majority of them are not working together. And so the first few pages of this book literally talk about how you guys all were together in a group in DC and were there together for a few days, I assume, and worked on a whole bunch of the content for this book together. I'd love to hear about that, and I'd love to hear about the process putting the book together afterwards, and then also kind of how you've continued to work together even now, since the book has come out.
Sure. Yeah. Back in October of last year was when our fellowship year kind of kicked off. And it was as much about getting the context of this global education, why it's important, and some of the background of it before we really dove into the content of making K through 12 lessons that we're going to put in a book later in the spring. So the conditions were really created for this amazing collaboration that happened all year long. We started our weekend in Washington, D.C. With some lectures and presentations by the NEA Foundation staff. And for this book project, we collaborated with Harvard education professor, Dr. Fernando Reimers, who's written extensively on this topic and is one of the leaders of teaching teachers how to adopt a global perspective in their teaching. And so we were broken down into groups by grade level, about 5 or 6 teachers per grade, and we got a start. And before we even left DC, all of our groups then shared out. We got some feedback from one another. We saw where some of our lesson plans kind of aligned and where one grade could build off of another. For example, the 3rd and 4th and 5th grade lesson plans all have something to do with water and water scarcity and access to water. So it was really helpful to see some of those connections being built even after we'd only had about 90 minutes or 2 hours to get this process started.
Yeah.
So then after that initial weekend, all of the 46 fellows, we went back to our states, we continued teaching, and we continued working on this global competency coursework that the NEA Foundation led us through. It was multiple hours of professional development that was self-paced. And a few of us even had some former global learning fellows act as mentors. And we would have these monthly check-ins and calls to touch base about our progress with the lesson and troubleshooting and our lessons in general for just our schools and how we're doing with incorporating some of these ideas that had been activated as part of our retreat. And fortunately, I was paired with one of the members from my 8th grade lesson group and as part of our mentor-mentee team. And these conversations helped us with our lessons for the book, and it also helped each other plan our lessons. She would give me some ideas, our mentor would give me some ideas, and she asked us for help planning this Global Learning After School Club, where she was trying to incorporate some food and then a pen pal activity with a partner teacher in Tanzania. So there were a lot of ideas that were able to be developed because we had this space to be collaborative in. And then later in the year, the NEA Foundation staff let us know that our lesson plans were going to be evaluated by some curriculum specialists from Better Lesson. And that was really, really helpful to have an outside eye kind of look at across the board all of the K through 12 lessons and take a look at aligning them for some quality and consistency. And because we had been up till that point working among ourselves and trying to coordinate through email and some Google Hangouts and Skype conversations and delegating who's doing what tasks, from assessment to writing the synopsis, and who's implemented what part of the lesson and who's had a colleague try it out. And then that gave us a chance to put everything in our shared documents and then have it be looked at and then have someone come back and say, all right, this part's really strong, but this part you could work on. And so that outside feedback was really helpful. So there were a lot of structures along the way, providing some context as far as that background information of what our goals really were. And then we had some help and nudges in actually creating and improving our content. And so then after that, after the book came out in May, we still had all these structures. We still had the relationships that we built. We still had the Facebook group that we were really active on. People were using Twitter chat hashtags like Global Ed and Global Sped for special education. And recently, a really cool thing just happened between Erin, one of our teachers from Fort Collins, Colorado. Her French class wrote and produced a script that is encouraging people to donate to their school's project that was raising money for clean water and sanitation projects in Haiti.
Wow.
And so they wrote this script in French and then got some, I think, video images. And another one of our teachers, Joe, in Miami, Florida, his high school video production class put their script and images into a video that they were then they were able to use as promotional material for getting the word out about this project that the class in Colorado was coming up with. So there have been so many cool opportunities to collaborate, like via Empatico and Flipgrid and Padlet, and all of these, like, teachers are now like connecting with each other in ways enhanced by technology, but because we were all in the same place at the same time at one point. And then some of these asynchronous things can be happening.
Not to mention, we spent several days together in South Africa last summer. So as part of the fellowship.
Wow.
So that was also an opportunity to come together and brainstorm ideas. And I'm engaged in a very low tech collaboration right now with a fellow from South Dakota, and her Spanish 1 students and my Spanish 1 students do a letter exchange. And so even that is hard to set up if you don't start forming these relationships, these connections.
So Noah and Sarah, how are people able to reach out to you guys, get in touch, connect with you? Twitter, I guess, is a good thing to share. How can people connect with you guys?
Sure. I have a Twitter handle. It's at Marchew, Marchew, and the NEA Foundation has its own Twitter handle. And they're really responsive. And I would also encourage people, to check out the Global Ed or Global SPED hashtags for Twitter chats. That's on Sunday nights is the special education specific one.
Awesome.
And often on Thursdays is Global Ed Chat on Twitter as well. And my handle is Zeichner, Zeichner, and sure, track me down. I'd be happy to talk with anyone about advancing global education in our schools.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah and Noah. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to On Education. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glenn Irvin. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glenn is at Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we'd love if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in the Apple Podcast or Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost, and this helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome, and we'll see you soon.